Good afternoon, everyone. It is 2:05, and I am delighted and excited that we have so many people who are interested in learning more about the Michigan Small Business Restart Program. We've got a wonderful kind of back and forth question and answer session that we're going to do on today. And I am just delighted that we've got so many people that are interested. I'll tell you now that my understanding was at least 197 people who were registered to attend this webinar regarding this program. And so that speaks to how important this is to the people here and to businesses here in this Southwest Michigan area. And so we're excited to give you this information. We think we've got a lot of good information and insights to provide to you regarding this program. Brief introduction, my name is James Liggins. I'm an attorney here at Warner, Norcross, and Judd. I'm also a board member on the Southwest Michigan First Board of Directors. And I am excited and happy to be a part of this program. One kind of note that I'll give you, it's a bit of a housekeeping note, is that because we've got so many people who are online on this webinar, we've got, first of all, when you come in, you're going to be muted. You're not really going to be able to speak. However, if you have specific questions, we encourage you please to write your question in the chat box. If it's a question we think that needs to be addressed to the entire group, we will address it at the end, probably more towards the end, to the entire group. If it's a question that we can respond to you directly, we'll do that as well through the chat box. But that's kind of the marching orders we have today. I want to introduce Ron Kitchens to you all, and we're going to jump right on in and get to this wonderful information that we have. Go ahead, Ron.
Awesome. So thank you, everybody, for being here. This is an exciting program. As far as I know, and our knowledge goes back about 30 years, Michigan has never done a program like this. You know, when the legislature created it with the governor, they didn't go out and ask a lot of questions. They just said, here you all go, figure it out. So every region around the state's doing it a little bit different based on their regions and the needs of the regions. If we look at Ann Arbor, they're writing much bigger checks, so they want to much fewer organizations because it's easier. And they believe that that's the most impactful. We believe the impact is to get the most people taking advantage of this. We know that as of this morning, we have 1,180 applicants from the region, so that's the 7 counties of the region. We know that just under 60% of those applicants are from women, people of color, or veterans. The veterans number is the smallest. We're still behind on activating veterans, but nobody particularly knew what that number would be. We know that the legislation says 30% of the funding should go to that group. It's certainly our hope that that number exceeds 45% based on the number of applicants we have. It may far exceed that. So we, at this point, we just need to get lots of people to apply. We also know that there's regions in the state that will not be able to spend the money they were allocated, particularly the UP and the Thumb, and that the legislature has stated that those dollars not spent will go back to the regions that did fully spend theirs and did meet the 30% set aside and exceed it. So we want to be that place that makes it really easy to get a second bite at the apple. So thank you all for not only being here for yourselves, but a lot of you, I see your names, and I know you're influencers and you're bringing others to the table. And that really is what this is all about, is making sure that everybody has a shot. So James, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you for that, Ron. All right, so I know you and I've known you for a long time, but why don't you introduce who exactly you are? Maybe somebody online don't know you, so go ahead.
So I'm the CEO and senior partner at Southwest Michigan First. We're a not-for-profit that was established 21 years ago by the business community because they saw Michigan going into a one-state recession, and have asked us to focus on our belief that the greatest force for change is a job. So we focus on jobs, on social change, things like the Kalamazoo Promise, things about the Foundation for Excellence, the Western Michigan University Business Technology Research Park, the medical school. A lot of those big transcendent projects come from our team and get worked on those for years to make sure that they are active. I also sit on the Board of Trustees at Western Michigan University, and I've sat in that role now for 3.5 years. So it's a tremendous honor that I get to do that on behalf of the community, one of 3 trustees who live in this community. All the other trustees reside throughout the state. Excellent.
Now let me back up and kind of touch briefly on something that you said previously. You said that, and as we all can see, there are people who are influencers who are really taking a strong interest in this program. And so if I can, I do want to just acknowledge 3 specific organizations that really came to the table, provided us some insight with respect to this program and how to really communicate to the various communities regarding this opportunity. That first one would be Black Wall Street, Nicole Parker. The other is Sisters in Business. I'm sorry, Black Wall Street is Nicole Triplett. Sisters in Business is Nicole Parker and Elisa Parker and their sister. And then we have Michelle Mitchell from Mitchell Consulting, who we really did get a lot of information, a lot of insights from them. And they also produced a how-to kind of webinar video as well that you can find if you go to the Black Wall Street Facebook group page. You'll see that as well. It kind of talks you through a how-to and about the application. And I just wanted to start the program saying thank you to those influencers and others who are out there who are really trying to get this word out and doing the great work of advocacy for businesses of color here in this area. All right, so jumping right in, Ron, why don't you just give us a quick backdrop of the Michigan Small Business Restart Program, a little bit more about what that program really, the background from it and what it really entails.
So in the Federal CARES Act, Michigan as a state was allocated $100 million to assist small business. A lot of states spent their money very quickly. Our state actually sat back and waited a few months and handled it through the legislative process. So each region there are 15 regions in the state, there are really 12 regions plus the 3 big counties of Detroit. Those 15 economic units are represented each by an economic development organization. We happen to be the one for Southwest Michigan. We represent the 7 counties. Essentially, you go to Battle Creek and go straight down to the border, across the border, over through Benton Harbor, St. Joe, across to South Haven, and then back to Kalamazoo, and that represents our region. Our region first received $3.5 million as part of the legislation. Then we received an additional just under $4 million to add to our total pot. These dollars are federal, so they have lots of regulations on us, how we audit them, but the state was smart enough to put groups that weren't governmental in charge so that we just didn't have the bureaucracy and the timing. And so it's our intent to speed the timeline as fast as possible. The legislation requires that the application process stays open till August 6th. At that time, unlike a lot of grants that take in grants and give away money in real time, and then they always run out of money before the last applications are in, this is the opposite. No decisions can be made and will not be made until every application is in. It's also one of the few grants that I've ever seen, it's the only grant I've ever seen, that if you go in and then you realize you don't have something, you can stop and go back and pick up where you left off. You don't have to restart. So that means it's really important that everything is there till the end. And then at the end, the legislation says that the lead organization shall make that decisions in 10 days. So we have to process the applications. We could do a maximum of $20,000 per grantee. It's our goal to actually do the opposite. We believe that 5,000 should be our target so that we can have 1,400 recipients and more people can share in this, as opposed to a few, in that case, larger organizations that would get all the money, and we still doesn't trickle down to those, if you would, on Main Street or, the smaller businesses. So we believe it's going to be harder because you have to do 1,400, checks and 1,400 grant agreements, but we believe it's critical that as many people share in this bounty as possible.
Excellent. Now, the other thing that is unique to this pot of funding, my understanding, is that there's been a earmark designation of at least 30% of the funds going to certain demographics. Can you explain that, Ron?
Yeah, so so at first, the law's a little crunchy. It's not as clear as it should be. It says the goal for statewide would be that 30%, which would be $33 million, be spent for women, minority-owned, and veteran-owned businesses. Well, we don't believe we can be held accountable to state numbers, so that maybe somebody does it. So we've taken it and said a minimum of 30% of our dollars in this region will be spent with those groups, and that's a minimum. As I said, right now, right at 60%. Last week Friday, it was 50 or 60%. Now I think we're at 59% of the applicants represent those three groups. And the reality is it's people of color and women that make that number up. We're shy on veterans, and frankly, a lot of our veterans are people of color, so they're getting in there double. So, and this is the first time in my career ever, and I've now been in economic development for 36 years, first time ever in my career, we've been in a position that we can absolutely mandate those dollars go to a group that it's set aside for. Usually it's a goal, and this is a mandate. It must be done. So those will be the first dollars spent.
And why don't we just go ahead and get into the grant eligibility requirements? What it sounds to me like the requirements, the goal has been to kind of take away some of the inherent barriers that some of the previous iterations of these dollars kind of created. And so it sounds to me like we've got a small, or at least a lessened number of eligibility requirements. Can you tell us about those?
It is. So in the past, it was only for companies that were directly affected by the governor's executive orders, which changed as she had more executive orders. But that was about 46,000 eligible entities in the previous iteration, out of about the 800,000 or so people who live in this region. It changed now in that on March 15th, you needed to have less than 50 employees, which is an amazing, because usually when they say small business, they use 500 people as a small business. So for the leadership, for the governor and legislature to say 50 clearly says they have a target audience of people this is for. It's for real small business. You had to be in business on that day. You had to, you can be any legal status. So an LLC, a not-for-profit, a church, any type of corporation. So when we do that number, It's about 150,000 eligible recipients.
Hey, Ron, let me interrupt you there. Is it just corporations, or now we're talking also sole proprietorships as well?
Yeah, sorry, sole proprietorship works. You can use either your federal ID number or your social security number. You need only have filed and with the Secretary of State that you are indeed a business, a not-for-profit, or a church. So you had to have been established. And I see where Jessica has put up the rules in the notes for that. But it essentially, if you're a business and transactioning business and filing the paperwork, you filed the paperwork last year, you're eligible. If you have less than 50 employees, it doesn't take into consideration whether you were profitable or not. In the past programs it did. It doesn't take into consideration whether you're up to date on your taxes. The past programs did. It doesn't look at any of those things. It looks at, were you in business? Did you get impacted by COVID? Less revenue, you lost customers, you were closed because of the executive orders. If you were impacted, you're eligible. And then, the last thing that it really looks at is in our mind, the most important is, then do you meet one of these three classes of people, a veteran, women, or a small business person of color? And then that's where the decisions start. So we found very few businesses that were not eligible to participate. And usually it was because they really didn't do business in the previous year. And so that'll hurt you. But if you were in business, you're eligible.
And something you said there, Ron, I'm just going to co-sign and say that I've been a part of some of the other local programs that did some of these loans for this epidemic or pandemic. And so the difference in that loan process is they're looking for ability to repay the dollars. But that's different than this specific grant, right?
These are grants. This is as close to, it's free money. The taxpayers will have to pay it back at some time through increased taxes. But right now, to small businesses, these are free dollars that do not have to be paid back. You are signing that you will do some paperwork over the next 2 years. And I'm looking at Jill Bland on my team who leads this program. Over the next 2 years, you're saying, hey, we'll keep you informed. We'll fill out the paperwork when you ask us to. And the paperwork is, how you doing? Are you still in business? Did the money help you? Are you growing the number of jobs or growing your revenue? It's really simple stuff, but it's just to make sure, frankly, that we're probably going to need another round or two of this. And so we want to make sure that we know the people who need it so we can help the fastest.
Ron, is there a disqualification for those businesses that have already received some level of funding like PPP or current funding from United Way and FEE? Or, I mean, should businesses be concerned if they have already received funding from some of these programs?
No, and the application, it may ask that, but it's not a consideration for us at all. It's not a line that we're considering. Originally, the legislature said no. If you had gotten previous grant funding from the state, you couldn't get this money. We, along with our partner economic development groups around the state, went and frankly got on bended knee and said, it's not fair. You don't really understand the impact you're having. And the legislature has come back and changed that. So if you've received grant funding, small business loan funding, PPP, you are 100% eligible. And if you did those programs, this application, you can do in your sleep. I believe the application's 10 questions. The hardest thing you have to answer is, what is your federal ID number or what's your social security? Those are the two, and everybody knows their social security. So what's your federal ID number is the hardest question you'll have to answer.
So Ron, the state divvied up this $100 million and basically gave responsibility to the various economic development organizations throughout the state the responsibility of administrating these funds and giving them out. So there's 15 various amounts, and it appears that Southwest Michigan First is responsible for 7.5 million. Is that right?
That's right.
What are the other counties that are included in that number? And is there a percentage amount that each county has to get with respect to the disbursement?
So the second question is the easy question, and is no, there are no set-asides by geography. So other previous programs there were, because we didn't know how to divvy up the money, we didn't know how the numbers would come in, and we wanted to make sure it was fair and equitable. But the legislature said, nope, you treat each area as a region, and you distribute the money how it needs to be. Now, the interesting thing is the applications are coming in almost identical to the percentage of population in the region. So people are participating from each county in an equal amount to what their population is. So, but it goes to the 30% gets carved off the top first, and then those dollars are then invested or granted to companies regardless of geography. Because frankly, somebody lives on a county line and they work in one county, and it just doesn't matter. What matters is that people in small businesses get those dollars. So it's and the counties are, and I'm terrible with county names. So you go to Battle Creek, and that's Calhoun. You go down to Branch County, to the south of that, over to St. Joe County, Kalamazoo, Cass, Berrien, Van Buren. Did I miss one, Jill? I got them all. That's it.
So Ron, we got a good question online, and at first I was going to wait until the end, but this is probably a good time to ask the question. When we are analyzing employees for the number on whether or not you qualify as a small business, will we also be including not only W-2 paid employees, but also 1099 contractor payments as well?
I think it's the number of full-time equivalent employees that your company is supporting. So if you can document that as 1099 or W-2, it's what you can document.
Gotcha. And is it safe to say that if you've got a question about that, you can contact us here at Southwest Michigan First, and we can kind of help you analyze that as well.
And we have 4 members of our team on the call now, and we have 11 members of our team trained to help. And I've set, you and I were able to do a radio program this weekend, and I had 5 people who reached out via email this weekend, and I just walked them through the application. We went online and did it together, and we will do that for anybody. Whatever it takes to get that done, our team's going to walk you through that in whatever form you need. There's also a 800 number hotline the state has on the website for the program. So, and then I know the 3 partners that you mentioned when we started also are actively working with members of the community to walk them through those details. But it really is the easiest program for federal dollars I've ever seen in my life.
So there's been a question about clarity on the maximum amount of the grant. Is it 20,000 or is it 5,000? I think that probably requires a little bit of explanation, because I know the maximum amount of the grant is 20. But
the legal maximum amount is $20,000. Our goal is to, rather than have 350 groups get $20,000 each, our goal is to hopefully find enough companies that we could have 1,400 companies getting $5,000 each. But until we get all the applications in and we see that everybody who applied met the minimum standards, and we see that then based on, for-profit first receiving funding, then the not-for-profit community, and in the not-for-profit community, there's the top priority for funding within the not-for-profits are organizations that work with, counsel, and coach minority businesses. Number 2 are the minority women and veteran. So those that are helping out our target audience so that we can make sure we're building capacity to assist that group and be good partners. Second would be those organizations that are doing community and neighborhood development, daycare, because we can talk about going back and restarting our economy, but if we don't have a daycare for our children, we're just not going to get it restarted. And then those that are focused on affordable housing. So then if we run out of, then if we still have money, then we'll be looking at additional not-for-profits and additional than the faith-based community. But right now, our focus is really for-profit businesses, and then those not-for-profits that serve and support those targeted business sectors.
Another interesting question we got online here is, what if the business currently isn't experiencing a dire financial need, but can show that their business has been impacted by the COVID crisis? Should they still apply?
Yes, they should. Everybody's difference or definition of dire is different. And, we've seen those folks that are in, I'll pick the gym business. Their businesses are gone. They haven't been able to operate now in 5 months. But we have others that maybe in the restaurant business where they're doing 60, 70% of what they were doing. Well, we don't know what the future holds. We know that COVID's going to be with us for a while. We know that impacts are going to continue. All the legislation says that you were impacted, your small business is hurt. So, last time we did this, we had, I think it was 3 of the 144 companies got time to write the check and said, you know what, I'm okay. You give it to somebody else, and you can do that if you choose to this time. But I think unless we show we have this impact and that we need these dollars, we're not going to be able to go get additional dollars. So I think it's really important that everyone who's been impacted go ahead and submit that so we can do our best to ensure, because I think we probably have another year of slugging it out, trying to save our small businesses. And I'd sure hate to see somebody not get the help they need.
In that same line, Ron, what can the grantees use these funds for? Is it specific to some type of expenditures or not?
Payroll, and that includes paying yourself. If you're in normal part of your payroll, so rent, utilities, taxes, or paying invoices that you're behind on. What you can't use it on is investing to grow. So you can't use it to say, well, I'm going to use this money to do a second location. I think you should be able to do that, but it's not allowed. So it really is those costs that everyday businesses are seeing and that you're writing checks for on a monthly or weekly basis. Those are the things that are eligible.
In the application, is it a requirement that the candidates also submit financial statements?
No, there's no financial statements, which makes it easy to apply. It makes it harder to validate who needs the money the most or the least, which is why we've taken the belief that if you could do that, well, then maybe the checks would be bigger, but we can't do that. We don't have access to that. And frankly, we couldn't process, we'll end up with hopefully a couple of thousand. We couldn't process that many loan applications or grant applications if we were having to review the financials in 2 weeks' time. And these are, one of the things that we want to remind people of is our commitment to your privacy. So because you're submitting your Social Security number as part of the grant, we will not see that Social Security number or your federal ID number until you've been selected for the grant. And then on a one-on-one, case-by-case basis, the state will transfer that information to us, because we believe that privacy is just too important in today's world. So, we're treating everything we have in the most confidential way, because nobody wants their business out into the world. So know that we respect that.
So now that's a segue into a question, though, about transparency. And that question, Ron, is will we know who actually received this funding?
Yeah, so we will publish it on our website. We have to by state law. We have to publish it on ours, and then it will be published on the state's. Ours will appear, I'm betting you 2 or 3 weeks before the state's appears. Because they're all still working from home and their bureaucracy. But absolutely, when the grants are made, the agreements are signed, the checks out the door, that list has to be published and on our website, and then it has to be published on the state's website. What we will not do is publish those who did not get the funding, because it's not those are private financial matters. Nobody needs to know anything about that, and we wouldn't want people to say, well, I wonder why they didn't get the money. What was wrong with them? What probably was, we just ran out of money, is probably the real answer.
So Ron, the application opened up on July 15th, right?
That's correct.
And but it's certainly not closed. My question to you is, at what point do we expect the decisions to be made and then the actual funds to get to the recipients?
So on the 5th at midnight, the application's closed, and that'll be the computer will shut down. On the 6th, I would think midday, that data will transfer to us so we can begin evaluating and processing. That will probably we're working now with the third party that's going to help us automate it a little quicker, because we want to be able to get the checks out as fast as possible. The big thing is going to be, there is a grant agreement that has to be signed with every person who receives it. And we've got the agreement done. The legal counsel has approved it. It's very simple. It just says, yes, I'm taking the money. Yes, what I said was true. And this is who I am. Here's my federal ID or Social Security number. And that I'll agree to talk to you a couple of times along the way to tell you how I'm doing. But that has to be signed an original form. And so it's probably, knowing folks' schedule, it's probably going to take a week or 10 days to get all of those signed. But then as soon as each one's signed, the check's going to get issued. So our goal is to have checks out the door. There'll be some that drag along on us, but our goal is to have checks out the door by August 15th.
Wow, that's a ambitious turnaround. Hopefulness, I'll call it.
People are hurting. There are folks on this call that are hurting. There are folks who are worried about getting evicted. There are folks who can't, whose employees are coming off to the $600 this week. They need to bring them back, and they need to take care of those people. So we know that in a lot of cases, this money really is a lifeline, and we respect it as that, and we're going to move heaven and earth to get it out the door.
So Ron, another question that came through is that we're planning to have, our hope is that 1,400 businesses will be able to have access to these funds.
Okay.
What happens with the allocation should that number be larger or smaller than 1,400?
We think when the last time we did this in our survey of small businesses tell us that $5,000 is a sweet spot. That's a number that really makes a difference to companies and changes their trajectory. It stops bad things from happening, and it helps at least hold things solid. So we want to focus on that 5,000 number. So we don't think the checks will get smaller than that, but let's say we don't get enough to do that, then the amount would increase of the check, because we have to spend the money. If we don't spend it, we have to give it back on September 1. Anything that isn't allocated and out the door goes back to the state of Michigan. We know there are regions that are going to do that. They've told us they're going to do that. They can't spend all their money. And so those regions that do spend all the money are going to get another pool of money. And then we can go fund those that were below the 1,400 number. And it would be awesome if we could pick up another million or two and then take that total number to 1,500, 1,600.
Ron, just for clarity, can you talk through this again for us? How will kind of the funding criteria be decided? Or rather, is there a certain criteria that will make a business more worthy of funding or increase the possibility of funding?
Yeah, so it increases, you get points. So everyone who passes through the minimum standards is into the system. So you have to do the minimum things to get through that, but you can't finish the application without doing the minimum things. So for us then, it's looking at, so you got 30% of the money gets spent first, but our criteria is the same in that for-profit companies that we want to fund first, because there's other programs that can help not-for-profits and the church. Then manufacturers, people producing products, get extra points. Those that are in childcare and those that are in, the state has an odd name for it, but those that are in hair, spas, and fitness, because those groups have been hit incredibly hard from the government shutdown, they get a few extra points. And then based on the number of employees, so somebody that has 1 to 6, I believe, employees gets 1 point. Somebody who's 7 to 12 gets 2 points. And somebody that is 13 to 50 gets 3 points, because we want to make sure that we're recognizing the ability to have the biggest impact. But we also know that I think the average so far of number of employees is 7 that we're getting in. So we're not seeing a lot of 50-person places. We're seeing a lot of very small businesses. And then, so we use that criteria to spend the first 30%. Then everyone goes back into the full pool. So if you were to, say you were a veteran, and just because you didn't get funded in that 30% doesn't mean you're out. You go back into the full pool. And then we use the same criteria for that full pool. So based on the data today that says 60% of our applicants meet the criteria of a business that's owned by a woman, a person of color, or a veteran, we believe that right now, if we were selecting this, the data tells us we're going to be 45 to 50% of the applicants are going to meet that, or not the applicants, of those funded will meet the set-aside criteria. So something we're pretty excited about. But there, the biggest focus is manufacturing, and then those businesses that were hurt the longest. Pain is relative. We all believe we were hurt hard, but those were hurt the longest. And gyms, salons, barbers, and daycare were really have not had a chance to compete And so we want to make sure that we're saving as many businesses as we can save.
So 2 clarifying questions that I see online. First of all, just confirming, this grant is not for someone that wants to start a business. This grant is for businesses, people who are already in business. What was the date of 2020? March 15th?
March 15th.
March 15th of 2020. And then the other question is, and I think it's a veiled question as to whether someone gets double points for falling into multiple categories. So let's say I'm a veteran, woman-owned business. Does that mean I get additional points added to the application process because of that?
It doesn't, but it means you get 2 bites at the apple. You get to only get the first bite of the apple that is only for people that meet the veteran, minority-owned, and women-owned pool. Then you get to come back in and get a second bite at the apple. So you really do get a strategic advantage if you meet that, but you can't stack points. Now there are federal programs that allow that. This legislation did not allow that, because typically you would be able to stack points for hitting all 3 of those, and this didn't. And then, yes, you had to have been in business. Now, I see Darren Timoney with Chase Bank is on the line, and Jill Bland and my team are on the line, and we are doing a partnership together that'll get announced in the next 30 days that we've brought in from Atlanta from a group called Plywood People that focuses on starting inner city businesses. And they've had incredible success on how to start a business. And it's really not doing your business plan. It's what is the work that you need to do to even figure out if you're an entrepreneur. Because there are great groups that can help you do your business plan and help you prepare. But there's not a lot where you can just be ignorant and say, I don't know if I'm called to be a small businessman or not. So in partnering with Plywood People, with Jill Bland and Darren Timoney, we'll launch that this fall. And so it is something that's on our heart and we're working on that we can then support. And I think that's what this has shown us, is we have to find partnerships with groups like Black Wall Street, Kalamazoo, where we can come together and support startup businesses of color, businesses of women, and do a better job targeting that, because we've seen how vulnerable we all are to just one little invisible virus. So to combat that, collaboration is going to be the key.
Ron, I appreciate you saying that, because it appears to me that we've got people locally here, like Black Wall Street, Kalamazoo, like Mitchell Consulting, like Sisters in Business and others, that are on the ground trying to do this work as well. And is it Southwest Michigan's intention to try to find ways to collaborate with those organizations to do this great work?
Absolutely. It's our intention to ask the question of what are your needs, wants, and desires, and how do we support you? Where are the holes that we can fill together? What are the resources you need to succeed? And let us help bring those resources around. Because in the end, all we care about is our fundamental core belief that the greatest force for change is a job. And that job doesn't know gender, it doesn't know ethnicity, it doesn't know military service. What it knows, goes to where it's nurtured. And we need to nurture and plant seeds and bring light around where we want those plants to grow. And it doesn't, and nobody can do everything. And we are not so arrogant that we believe we have all the answers. We just want to be part of the answer.
Wonderful. Now we've got about 11 minutes and it appears to be some good questions coming up. So I'm going to cover those and then we'll end with one other question. But one of the questions that came up was specific to the application process. And I want to, it may be that our answer to this question is contact us specifically and we will help you think through it. But I do want to get to that one if you give me a second here. It is It had to do with part number 7 of the certification form that says, talks about ineligible expenses. And it says that payroll or benefit expenses for employees whose work duties are not substantially dedicated to mitigating or responding to the COVID-19 public health emergency. It sounds like some people are interpreting that as being a inhibiting factor for whether or not they could, those expenses are eligible. Can you, if you can't talk about it or anyone from the team right now, maybe we can ask this person, I think it was Dr. Brooks, to contact us directly.
Yes, so we would love to talk about that, but really we haven't found what that example is addressing. So we haven't found a small business that wasn't impacted by COVID, and we haven't found a small business that everyone in the organization wasn't impacted. So there probably is an example out there because somebody wrote that rule to mitigate something. We just haven't found anything it applies to. So that's one of those that we kind of shake our head and go, you know, there's probably something. You know, I know the marijuana stores did booming business, so they're probably going to have trouble showing economic hardship because of COVID. So that may be an example, but we haven't found a lot of other small business examples that that limited it. And I saw Monique French said, what about a not-for-profit that serves women and children? Should we apply? Yes, please. We know if you're not getting funds to do your work, that we are going to be less than as a community, and we can get everybody started back. But if there's no daycare, if there's no support for families, you know, we have a, you know, we had a problem here in our own team where 50% of our employees could not come back to the office because school is out and they did not have daycare. So please do apply. The work you do is incredibly important.
Excellent. And that includes the faith-based organizations that are working and focusing on women and children services as well. Is that right, Ron?
Yeah, particularly we know a number of the churches have daycare centers. We know there's a number of churches that have small business centers. We know there's a number of churches that are working on programs to support women, particularly women and families that are most vulnerable and have been abused. All of those programs are eligible for these dollars. And if they don't apply, there's no way we can get dollars to them.
There was a question, Ron, about working capital, whether we can explain kind of what they mean by that, and is there a certain amount of working capital that is needed as a criteria? I think the answer is no, but let's just confirm that.
Yeah, I think the answer is no. And you know, if you need additional working capital, there are some, and I don't want to assume everyone on this call is either a woman, a minority-owned business, or not-for-profit, or a veteran. But we have a number of the banks who have created set-aside programs to help with working capital around this very issue that are dollars significantly bigger than this. And we would love to be that conduit to introduce you to those bankers and help you get into their programs. As I mentioned, Darren, who is on Darren Timoney with Chase, who's on the call, that Chase has done incredible work in Detroit and in Michigan on these dollars. So the answer is no, but give us a call and we'll help.
So we already mentioned some of the folks that have helped before, including Black Wall Street, Kalamazoo, Sisters in Business, and Mitchell Consulting. But I'd also say that SCORE has stated here on the chat that they're supporting these organizations as well, and have folks who can help you help you through some of these topics and through this application, I assume, as well. So thank you to that, and thank you to SCORE. There was another question asked about whether the video and information that we've collected here today, whether this will be shared later anywhere. I think we're still making a determination about that. We want to make sure that the quality of this recording is such that we feel comfortable getting it out. But I will also say that, again, Black Wall Street, Mitchell Consulting, Sisters in Business, they do have a video that is out if you've got some questions about some of the process. Now, let me end in this with this point for Ron, for you to talk about. Southwest Michigan, we've been starting to have, Southwest Michigan First rather, we began having some internal discussions about what does social justice look like for us. And I want to know from you, Ron, can you share more about Southwest Michigan First's commitment to minority and small businesses currently here in our community and how we see ourselves in the future as well?
Yeah, so that's one of those that we're friends and having a conversation. And so I'm hesitant to talk about, because my ignorance is so high. My level of I don't want to be that 50-year-old white guy that says, I got it all figured out. Here's what we need to do. I got all the solutions. All I know is that we have a commitment to listen, to develop support systems, which does not mean that we're going to come in and, gosh, we're going to rent a space and we're going to create a new this and a new that. There's already great programs out there that we want to support. We know that there are issues in particular, the minority community, that are different than what we deal with every day. We know, again, and it seems like I'm doing a commercial for Chase Bank, but Chase came out with data this week that showed the vulnerability of small businesses that were owned by people of color versus the vulnerability of small businesses that are owned by predominantly white, but others. And that the cash on hand, the stress levels, we know those are things that we can help address, but we're right now listening and processing and trying to be partners. And I'm not pejorative when I say that, talk about our ignorance. Ignorance is our enemy, but I can't be so arrogant that I believe I know I have all the answers. I don't. My board of directors doesn't. But what we know is if we ask enough people, and that there will be pockets for us to work in and support. It won't be in everything. We don't do everything in the economy now. We believe the greatest force for change is a job. And we want to support men and women who create jobs, men and women who need job training for jobs. We want to support the Foundation for Excellence, which came from, our work. And morphed into that because the city and particularly the city manager could take that and run with it, because in the end, we need everybody to be awesome. The only way this community thrives is if every man, woman, and child has an equal opportunity to be incredible, to grow their business, grow their job, and do it in a safe, supportive, and engaged environment. And that means we're going to be in listening mode through the fall. We're doing a series of lunches now with business, community, and church leaders to say, what are the issues? What should we be talking about? We'll continue to work with those on this call who, frankly, we haven't been great partners with over the past because we haven't needed each other. Well, maybe we weren't open to as much to the need as we should have been. And so we're committed to that. But I don't know what it's going to look like. And if I did tell you I knew what it's going to look like, should run me out of town on a rail, because we don't have enough information yet to know what people need. But when we do, we'll be there to be good partners.
And is it safe to say that it's also an internal dialogue with respect to Southwest Michigan First as a whole, as well, with respect to some of these structural thought processes and issues that we need to address internally?
Absolutely. Just the things that things of bias that we discovered in the last round. For instance, one of the things the state required that we do everything on an Excel spreadsheet last time. What we found was small businesses across didn't know how to operate the Excel spreadsheet. So by saying, well, you can only get the money if you're an expert on Excel spreadsheets, says, well, that everybody who's not an expert, you're out. And so what we know is we have to be much better at saying, how do we maximize people and their ability to self-guide? As you know, I grew up, my mother's 15 years older than me, and my dad 16. Neither of my parents finished the 8th grade. My father was illiterate, couldn't read. And I grew up getting a government check on the 3rd of every month. I grew up eating free lunch every year of my life. I know what it's like to be poor, but I don't know what it's like to be poor in a minority, and that's a whole different level. So we have a sensitivity to that, but I know that if we stop at that sensitivity, we're not doing enough. And so we're going to find I don't know if there's an answer to what enough is. I know that we can do better, and because you will hold us accountable to do better. You and I look, and everybody sees a different screen here. I'm really lucky. The right in the middle of my screen is Sonia Hollins. And when I get to see Sonia and the Mersey Tate Explorers, how do you not want to do better? How do those young women not inspire you to do better? And we owe it to each other, and you have our commitment that we're going to be there.
Whatever
that needed.
I'm so happy to hear that, and I just want to say thank you for your time today, Ron. Thank you, Southwest Michigan First, Jessica Penny, Abby Romeri, Faye Davis, Jill Bland, all that have assisted in helping us to put this on, and who are working nonstop right now to make sure that our community can benefit as much as we can from this program and other types of programs. Obviously, you've got information here where you can contact people if you've got other additional questions. We're at the end of our time, but I just want to say thank you. Thank you for the privilege of speaking with you. And my hope is that everyone on this call can take advantage of this wonderful, great opportunity. Ron, I'll leave you with the last words, and we will, as we say at church, we will dismiss.
Thank you all, and as we say at church, God bless you.
All right.